Welcome to the Women's Gut Health Podcast, where functional nutrition meets ancient wisdom to bring you grounded insights and practical tools for your wellness journey. Join Lara, wellness wizard and licensed Eastern medicine practitioner, and Molly, dietitian and gut health expert, as they unpack trends, tackle bloating, balance hormones, and help you thrive in modern womanhood without completely losing your frickin' mind. Let's do it.
Hello.
Hello, Molly. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
That's what I like to hear.
Woo.
So today we're going to talk about some popular diets and what we think about them and just some general opinions. But before we get into that, what was the best thing you ate this week?
Oh my gosh. So we had a roommate that moved out. We have a little furnished finder, and she moved out to go down to Mexico for an extended period of time. Lucky her.
Mm.
And we made her a goodbye meal. And I made kind of a play on a niçoise salad. At least I
Mm.
think this is what it was. You can tell me you're the chef. But we did just mixed greens and a soft boiled egg and some boiled potatoes, like the teeny tiny little cute ones. But I decided that I wanted to make it a morph, like a wedge, so I added bacon and blue cheese to it.
Hmm.
It was so good. I think there was something pickled on there as well, and then I just made like a vinaigrette to go with it. But she also flavored some, which is like one of my absolute favorite foods ever, is bone in and with skin chicken thighs in the air fryer.
Hmm.
It's just so good. They're so good. I could literally eat that meal all day long. I feel like I'm getting an enormous amount of fat, good lean fat, nice veggies, lots of different colors in there. So good. Yeah. What about you?
Awesome. What about me? So my husband makes curry.
Oh,
And it has like eggplants and zucchini and cilantro. And we do shrimp, and it's really, really good. So that's what mine is.
did he make his own curry powder or curry?
No, we use the paste, green curry
Uh-huh.
paste, which can be a
Yeah.
little spicy from the Asian market.
Yeah, nice. Those are good. I would love to get in the habit of making my own curry paste and doing it in like the little cube, frozen cubes or whatever.
Hmm.
I'd love to make that a part of food prep, but I just haven't got there.
Well, that would definitely be an undertaking, and I think it'd be super fun, honestly.
Right?
And it's such a good vehicle
It
for,
would be,
and
yeah.
coconut milk,
I
obviously.
like I
It's such
love
a
just
good vehicle for anything. Like if you want to put a bunch of vegetables in something, if you want to do like all kinds of, you know, different whatever it is, it's a nice way. You could put chickpeas in there. It's just a nice way to get whatever kind of fiber and yummy goodness you want.
yeah, and it's there I find it so flavorful. Like, I find a lot of the time when you're cooking stuff, you're like, "Oh, it's just kinda the same, garlic, Himalayan pink salt, all of it." We use a lot of that around here. So I'm like, "Oh, it's so nice to have just those, like, lovely fresh flavors just right there ready to go. Captured,
Mm,
frozen, boom, let's do it." That sounds great.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then what's the other one? Oh, the internet. What did you see on the internet
On the internet. Well, I figure
that
with
you,
this diet thing that we're going to talk about
yes.
today, popular diets, that it reminded me of a post I saw from a woman that I enjoy following. She is by trade a graphic designer, but kind of a life hacker on a doing things. And she was having a conversation with Vince Pitstick, I believe. And they kind of come up in my feed a lot. And one of the things they were talking about was coffee or no coffee in the morning on a fast.
Mm.
And what I really took from it, which I was so happy to hear them say, which is exactly what we say about Supercube, is that if first of all, you're going to metabolize coffee a little bit differently. Everybody does, right? The state of our liver, our genetic makeup, our where we're at in life, and how we're responding to stress and all the things is going to make our cup of coffee experience a little different for each
Mhm.
person. But most people are going to be fine. I mean, you could probably test your blood sugar and see how it works for you if you're super super curious. But if you do pretty well with coffee, the idea is that it does engage the, more of the metabolic pathway that is closer to like burning glucose as opposed to burning fat. So one thing you can do is put MCT or ghee or coconut oil or butter or something in there to, quote unquote slow down the metabolism of the coffee, which has, kind of been known for a long time. It's typical in Ayurvedic practices. Also the bulletproof, kind of revolution was a big part of that as well. But what I really liked about it was, no matter what you're using, whether it's a cup of, a scoop of Supercube, 1 tablespoon, at least of Supercube, is under 100 calories. And it's primarily from fat and protein. So I loved
Mm.
that he said 100 calories, because when you look around, some people can go as high as, 400 or 500. Some people say don't even eat a stick of gum, which I think is absolutely bananas.
Oh, that's
Which
ridiculous.
how, like, our bodies are just so stressed. I think any support we can get. And the idea of that 100 calories is that you're still favoring the metabolic pathway, your ability to bring in and get energy from nutrients. You're still favoring the fat burning side with that fat and protein. So I really was so happy to hear that 100 calories. I was like, oh, okay, good, that's perfect. And of
Hmm.
course,
Hmm.
Cube has 100 calories, so that made me feel good too. Which it was designed that way specifically to keep you in your ketogenic state or fat burning state. So I found that really interesting.
Oh, that's so cool. That is really cool. I've heard always 150, and that's the rule I practice. So
Nice.
works for me because I add extra collagen
Yeah.
at 35 calories a serving.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I find I have a
Um,
second cube often that I'll put, well, more protein in. Yeah, like whether it's like a bone broth protein or whey, or I don't really like hemp in there because it's too green and gritty. Or just more collagen. Yeah, that works awesome. I find that's like a nice way to extend if you need like 1 hour or two more before you start digesting.
hmm. Mine was there's this one going around that video going around where there's this guy and he's like, oh, like I'm so depressed, I don't feel well, like I can't lose weight, blah blah blah. And the doctor's like, well, what's your bedtime routine? And he's like, oh, I watch TV. And the doctor's like, for how long? And he's like, 6 hours.
Oh my god. What? That's
and then
so
and then
wrong.
he's like, okay, and then what do you do when you get in bed? He's like, oh, my wife and I scroll videos for an hour.
Oh.
And he's like, what do you eat? And he's like, oh, last night I had a pizza, a pack of whatever, like chips, and then a tangerine.
Wow.
And the doctor's like, are you getting any physical activity? And he's like, oh, no. This is like a parody, obviously.
Sure.
He's like, oh, no. And then the doctor's like, well, it's no wonder why you're feeling this way. And the guy goes, do you think it's a tangerine?
Of course. Blame it on the
You know what
tangerine.
I mean? And I was like, yes,
Oh.
because we're so quick to demonize like fruit and all this other stuff. When if we just looked a little bit further out to our other habits,
Mhm.
imagine what we could tweak to get some better results faster. And I don't think that because fruit has fructose and fiber and water and antioxidants and vitamins and minerals, that
Mhm.
it is the reason why you are stagnant, right?
That's a good
But like
one.
I've had that conversation so many times, like maybe not to that extreme degree, but it's like, yeah, my stomach hurts, and I really think that it's because I eat so much fruit. And I'm like, oh, what else is going on?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
don't let them get you.
Don't do it.
Don't. Yep. All right. So we've got three diets we're talking about today: low carb, carnivore, um, and vegan. We're going to kind of encompass some different things into some of these. So, like keto will kind of fit in here as well. But we wanted to take this time and break down these three diet patterns because they're very popular. I think for a long time, everyone has a perception of low carb and vegan being, quote, healthy.
Mhm.
And then now carnivore on the scene. So let's do it. Tell me what you think about the low carb diet.
Low carb. Well, I do want to preface real quick that, when we think about, I think about the Eastern medicine and how we view what we would suggest to people in terms of their food and nutrients that they should be bringing in every day. And one of the things that um, is really important for us is your constitution. So it's like what kind of environment are you living in? What are your genetic factors? What's your toxic exposure? How's your microbiome? What's your stress level? What's your inflammation? And also, are you warmer? Are you colder? Do you tend to crave warm liquids? Do you want cold liquids? How does spicy food work in you? Are you Do you get dizzy when you stand up? How heavy is your period? These sorts of things all give us a really good direction of what nature, flavor, and temperature of foods that would fit your body in particular. So I just kind of wanted to
Hmm.
put that out there, that even within these, very metabolic outcome driven type of diets like vegan and carnivore and low carb, that even within those, you still have some things to consider in introducing it to yourself, which you should always go over with a professional for sure. Um,
Hmm.
so low carb is an interesting one because, I kind of just did a few pros and cons. The pros I think about with low carb is that your blood sugar levels, which you can kind of look at this from a bunch of like a couple different angles, but I think that the blood sugar level can be more optimal because you naturally eliminate fake food, right? Like really processed stuff, bread, rice, pasta, those sorts of things. I also think it can be the a little more anti-inflammatory. So in those sense, I kind of like it that way. But I don't love it because carbs are really essential for things like your hormones and your brain and your organs. And you need it to have fuel to do things like exercise, which keeps you really healthy. And I think it also kind of demonizes things like what you just talked about. Like, is it the orange? Because it was too much sugar. I think it kind of demonizes things that are created, in nature in a way that tends to be perfect for you with fiber and water and vitamins and minerals.
Hmm.
So those are kind of my basics. What about you? What do you think about low
Oh
carb? Do
my
you love it?
gosh.
Do you hate it?
Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite. Um, well, so first of all, my nutrition philosophy is that I'm a realist,
Yeah.
and I believe that we have the most success with things that we can sustain
Mhm.
and that we can always tweak the current kind of plan. Doesn't mean that we failed. It means we're working toward a life that doesn't feel like a diet or a trend or a 75 hard. We're working towards a life that's just a life, right? That has
Yeah.
everything in it. It
Mhm.
has exercise, it has rest, it has recreation, it has, whatever it is. So low carb to me is first of all not sustainable.
Mhm.
Why? Because your brain needs 150 grams of carbs a day to function.
Mm.
So if it doesn't get them from, and that doesn't, I'm not saying, go out and eat boxes of Cheez-Its every day. I think a lot of people, the connotation is carbs equals ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
And we've got to remember that carbohydrates are in fruit. They are in whole grains. They're
Yes.
in legumes, beans, black beans, chickpeas, that kind of thing, hummus. They are in corn and potatoes and wild rice. And you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
none of those things are inherently bad for you. They all have different nutrients and minerals and vitamins in them that are really important. Fruit is a huge source of antioxidants and immune boosting stuff. So not only does our brain need them, but also our body needs the nutrients, and some nutrients are really only found in like whole grains. Like a lot of the minerals are harder to find in like just regular other stuff. So I think that's remembering that macronutrient distribution is a thing because there's science involved. It's not just like, oh well, we can just cut that out and make the wheel 10% carbs and all this fat and all this protein, because we're getting the calories then from protein and fat. Now, fat, great for your hormones, but protein, if we eat too much protein, then it starts over time to become taxing on our kidneys.
Mhm.
And if we're so hungry, and that hunger that we feel on a low carb diet is really a hunger for carbs. And at some point, you are going to want sugar so bad, which is the quickest, most usable form of
Mhm.
glucose, because it is glucose.
Mhm.
That and glucose is what your brain uses. So instead of having to just day after day turn fat or protein into glucose via, some fancy footwork by your body, your brain's like, forget this. I'm going to make you want sugar so bad that you have it.
Mhm.
And you are going to get those carbs. And then you're going to feel like a failure. And you're probably going to binge on a bunch of other stuff because then you're like, oh, I failed. And, I can't do this. And then after 2, 3 days, you see the scale shoot up because your body has to learn again how to process these components and macronutrients. And I think that's a horrible, horrible cycle to get stuck in. And I
Yeah.
don't think you deserve it.
No, I agree too. I think that up and down, especially with the brain, like when the brain is starved, it does really weird things to our psyche. And the more we spend, our metabolic day going up and down and up and down, not only is it not great for our mental health, but also it's a terrible place for inflammation to brood. Like it just is the perfect environment for inflammation to be like, woohoo, I'm taking off right now. All systems
Right.
go. Yeah.
Well, and if you view carbs as bad, then you're going to look for bad carbs. Quote, bad. Food is not bad or good, but you're going to look for sugar and Cheez-Its. And you know what I mean? I just think that there's
Mhm.
room for those things in anybody's diet in moderation. And the less that you restrict yourself, the more that you can control yourself around stuff like that.
Exactly. And I think it's good too to separate that fine line between satiation and starvation, right? Like I'm not getting any of it, so I'm dying to have it, so I need to have it right now. Like that's where it pivots into more like it's a mental game, and that's exhausting. And you don't even have energy to do it to begin with because you didn't give your brain enough carbs. So you're not making a really good decision from that space that you're in. That
No
can be
kidding.
really tricky. It doesn't feel good. So giving your body what you know is adequate amount of carbs. So I do have a question for you, Molly, my dietitian human lover friend. What would 150 grams look like for the average bear?
Ooh. Okay, so and this goes actually into the last thing I wanted to say about this, which is, and don't mind me, I'm just rummaging for a book. We are needing carbs also because our blood sugar. So when carbohydrates are the one thing that affects our blood sugar, fat doesn't, and protein doesn't. In like its pure form. Obviously, if you're eating a beef Wellington, it has puff pastry. It's gonna, but the if we don't have carbs or if we're on a low carb diet, then chances are we're not going to have any carbs for breakfast. We're not going to have any carbs for lunch. And then we're going to have like something that has carbs for dinner. And a lot of people are like low carb except for the wine, right? So that's going to start,
I
which
mean, that's
is
a
like
great
one of
place to take your carbs. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, honestly, but that's all part of a balanced diet if you want it to be.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, like, so let's say you don't eat any carbs all day, and then for dinner, you have a glass of wine, and then you do eat a little bit of cheese, which dairy does have carbohydrates in it. And then you have like your regular chicken and salad or whatever. Your blood sugar is going to skyrocket, and it's been low all day. So, that over time that dysregulation is incredibly bad. I mean, that's really the major driver of chronic disease is not having stable blood sugar.
Mhm.
And
100%.
so one of the ways that diabetics control their blood sugar is by counting carbohydrates. Now, it's it's a lot, and I feel bad because I think a lot of people who have diabetes like don't get enough education about it.
Not at all.
But I don't think this is required, but I think it's good to know some of these things. So the American Association for Diabetes has something called the exchange program. So like they have choices, and each choice is 15 grams of carbohydrates.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so f- so if we look at everything in a scope of 15 grams of carbohydrates, then 150 divided by 15 is 10 servings or exchanges. And of a 2000 calorie diet, just for example,
Mhm.
2000. Oh, hang on. So, okay, sorry. I can't do this math and talk, and I don't want this to be boring. But basically, 150 grams times 4 calories per gram will give us how many calories that is.
Okay.
Um, and then we can figure out like what percentage of 2000 calories that would be, but we're not going to do that because it's boring.
I kind of feel like
So,
what you're saying is like what Weight Watchers is kind of coming to my head when you say this,
well, I
that like
mean,
not in a bad way, but like you can have as many servings of this much, like you can have this much vegetable this many times a day and just eat your heart out. You know what I mean? Like you can
mhm,
have as much of those as you want because they don't necessarily spike or lower the blood like a green leafy or maybe some red
exactly,
peppers or that sort of thing where you're like, I can eat these.
exactly,
And maybe even if I pair it with a little hummus or a little nut butter or a handful of nuts or something that like, ooh, I'm getting a little extra calorie, but that's just allowing my brain to function so much better on the slow burn side.
exactly.
So what I hear you
Hmm.
saying is it's not necessarily, it's kind of the, the things that it's not the, it's like the middle of the road foods, right? That when you eat them, you're not like, oh my gosh, I have to sit down and digest. I just had steak and potatoes. And it's not like, whoa, I just had a bar that has 15 grams of sugar in it. And now I'm just like, woohoo. And then I crash in 15 minutes. Like it's kind of that middle of the road for food where you're like, I feel good when I have maybe the example that I gave earlier, like a niçoise salad with a piece of chicken. Like I feel pretty good after that. I'm digesting, I'm recognizing I'm digesting, but I'm not tanking and I'm certainly not spiking.
Right. And I'm sure, that there were, that was balanced. And the blue cheese, of course, carbohydrate. So I think there you can have a salad and a protein, but like add some chickpeas, add some, croutons, have it with a piece of fruit or add fruit into your salad. Or, there's just so many ways. I'm not saying like you got to go out there and eat a taco shell,
Mhm.
but certainly, yeah, there's just no reason to put yourself through this. And I get a lot of bodybuilders that come to me, or ex-bodybuilders that come to me in their 40s and 50s with severe gut issues because all they ate their entire lives was basically protein,
Yeah.
and they really did not eat much fat,
Yeah.
especially like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
so their microbiome's pretty messed up.
That is exact.
um
Yeah. I was just thinking of that. Maybe that might be a great segue into the carnivore diet.
oh, do you want to know what 150 grams of carbohydrates looks like?
Yes, ma'am. I love it. I'm so
Okay,
sorry to put
so
you on the spot like that.
oh no, it's totally fine. Okay, so of a 2000 calorie diet, I never really want you to go lower than 45% carbohydrates. You can manipulate the fat and protein, but I think 45% is kind of the bare minimum. So that would be 225 grams.
Okay.
Um, 150 grams of carbs is 30% of a 2000 calorie diet.
Okay.
So if we're looking at 10 exchanges, it could be for breakfast, we would have oatmeal, and that would be cooked. A half a cup cooked is 30 grams. Then we've got our maybe cup of blueberries with that oatmeal. There's another 15, so we're up to 45. For lunch, we're going to have a third of a cup of quinoa with our salad, which is 15 more. So we're up to 50 now, right? And then as a snack, we're going to have an apple. A medium-sized apple is 30 grams. And maybe then we'll have a little smoothie or something. So we've got so far half a cup of oatmeal, a quarter cup of quinoa, or a third of a cup of quinoa, some fruits, and we've made it through past snack time, and we're at like 50. You know what I mean? So 150 grams is a considerable amount. So when you think about that, you don't when you go low carb and you don't like anyway, sorry. We're getting off the thing.
No,
So
I
then
think
you
you're
have
doing, I think that's great. I think it's great. And I just wanted to add to it a little bit too that most of the time when you're building those meals, like you mentioned, with the, focusing on the carbohydrate value of all of those within 30% of being your whole day, you can also kind of think of it in those quote unquote 10 exchanges, that with that oatmeal, maybe 30% of that is carbohydrate and you have a little along with the blueberries, but hopefully you put a bunch of butter and some nuts on
Yep.
top of it as well, so that
Yep.
your microbiome is getting a good diverse set of nutrients that are coming in, but then B, so that that carbohydrate load is being offset and slowed down a little bit by the
Hmm.
fats that are in there, making it nice and balanced. And then each of those add up to the day, which you do that more frequently, each throughout the week, throughout the month, whatever. And then your blood sugar has the ability to not only receive, and it's more tolerant to the variety that's coming in, which I think is huge to remember.
Oh my gosh. And you want to have some hard boiled eggs or some scrambled eggs with that oatmeal because we want protein for energy. To again really help us to keep that steady, stable blood sugar, carry us through the day.
Yes.
But I think where it gets really tricky is, let's say you're having a day and you go to Krispy Kreme. Um,
And it most likely starts with 2 glasses of wine the night before, and you woke up and you're like, well,
right.
I feel like crap and I'm already on the crap train, so I'm just going to go ahead and start the day with Krispy Kreme because I'm going to walk this afternoon. I can't tell you how many
It's
times.
happening. So Krispy Kreme, we've got 30 grams. Let's say you go to the office and you have breakfast, but there's a scone and it looks so beautiful and it's 4-ounce scone, so it's about the size of the palm of your hand. That is 60 grams of carbs.
Ugh.
So you know what I mean?
But
So if
that's
you
all
didn't eat
carbs.
breakfast,
Who's going to put
y-
butter on a scone these days?
well, but there's actually 3 fat exchanges in there. So there's a lot of butter in a scone.
Okay. Oh, that's true. That's actually
Yeah.
true. I'm sorry. You're
But
right. I'm
at
not
the
a
same
baker.
time, it's still going straight to the dome.
Yeah.
Like I don't think, you would need
Hmm.
some protein with
Yep.
that. If you were doing like a sweet and sour sauce, let's say you are going low carb and you're making your low carb stir fry and you use 3 tablespoons of sweet and sour sauce, well, that's 15 grams. So, it can really sneak in there
Yeah.
with things like that.
Yes. That's a good point.
Jams and jellies and chocolate, syrup or chocolate chips in your pancakes or whatever it is.
Hmm.
So I think that's where, when we're looking at a low carb diet, what if we just went with a regular 45% carb diet and
Hmm.
then took it easy on some of these sweeter sauces and donuts and coffee creamers
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, almost like the low carb is a bit of a mindful transition out of too
Mhm.
much carb, that it really isn't serving you at all. Those things that you just mentioned, they
Right.
aren't necessarily serving us, other than maybe they're just delicious. And from time to time, that's fine. But routine wise, that can add up. You can have half of your day's worth of carbs already being in there from fake, just,
Just condiments.
yes, from, yeah, from just condiments. That's so
I
true.
mean, seriously,
Hmm.
and like the salad, like ranch, people who love ranch, and here in the South, they really love it.
Mm, I mean,
So
peanut butter and milk
you're
ranch,
really getting it.
a
You're really
ton.
getting it. But the other thing that we would want to think about too is, are we is it the tangerine,
Yeah.
or is it all these little things that you don't even realize that you're eating
Yep.
throughout the day,
Yep.
like the sauces and the creamers and that kind of thing, and
Mhm.
the scone that you weren't thinking about and you ate as you walked from this reception to your desk? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
without even realizing it, you've had 60 grams of carbohydrates. Of course, a low carb diet is going to bring you results fast because it makes you think before you put stuff in your mouth.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I love that.
But just do that
Is
and don't
this
worry about the
carb,
carbs.
yeah, is this carb worth the load? Could I swap it out for something that's a little more balanced, but would still kind of give me that same feeling minus the crash afterwards?
Exactly right. Okay. So kick us off for carnivore.
Carnivore. Oh my gosh. So I am really intrigued by this diet, because one of the things that got me really interested in diet to begin with, and it was actually my dad that brought this up to me. He was like, Laura, did you know there's this book out there? This was years ago, over 20 years ago. There's this book out there that tells me I need to eat meat because I'm an O blood type. And I was like, okay, I need to read about this. This is, I think, James and Jim Diadamo. I can't remember. I think that dad was Jim, and James Diadamo did all this research on the different types of blood types, and that, the oldest blood on the planet that are used to hunting and gathering and sustaining off of mostly meat and whatever else they could forage, tend to do a little bit better with these types of diets, right? Like carnivore or something. But you see it coming out now in social media and, these kind of the fad diet categories where people are like, well, I'm just going to eat meat and see how it makes me feel. And my pros for this is it's really high in complete protein and fat. Cool, that's great. We need those things. It is pretty blood sugar stabilizing, which when they did kind of like a data gathering study, it wasn't double blind or controlled or anything, but just kind of looked at different ways in which people were doing this carnivore diet. And I can give you a little link to the study here when we're done. But essentially, it improved the glucose levels for a lot of diabetics, just I think because of that blood sugar stabilizing aspect. And within that, it's very anti inflammatory. However, it is very expensive if you are sourcing it properly so that the fats and the proteins that you getting aren't ridden with toxic chemicals. It's really hard on the environment to eat a lot of meat. And it can raise, I think, kind of the lower density lipoproteins, or that quote unquote bad cholesterol that people talk about. Um, and I don't necessarily think that that's a terrible thing. Personally, I don't think so. I would prefer it's just in a body that maybe isn't uninflamed. Like if you are in an inflamed body and your LDLs are high, I think that's a recipe for disaster. But I think if your LDLs are a little bit high, I don't actually think that's so terrible. And it
Hmm.
has a lack of microbiome diversity. It's just meat. Those are my thoughts. What about you, dear?
Those are good
You going to
thoughts.
eat meat
Those are
all
good
day?
thoughts.
You know, sit down and eat
Nope.
jerky for lunch and eggs for breakfast and a slab of ham for lunch, dinner, and bacon for a snack
Right,
before bed.
right. So with carnivore, the benefits that I see are, and so from a gut health lens too, um, fiber is what feeds our bacteria in our gut. That's what populates it and keeps it going and thriving. That's also what interacts with the overgrowth bacteria and causes a lot of symptoms, which is why the low FODMAP diet, which we'll do in a different episode, is so effective at first.
Hmm.
But that means, so for gut people, the carnivore diet can be helpful because you're really removing anything that has any chance of causing symptoms. So if it is food related, your symptoms, then you're definitely going to see a reduction in those. And I can see why that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
A lot of times, we find aflatoxins, which is a form of mold, in rice and other kind of corn products,
Hmm.
especially things like, that bag of rice that you've had in the back of your pantry for 3 years, throw that out because it is moldy, even if you can't see the mold.
Yeah.
So we're reducing a lot of the mold if we're sourcing it correctly, like you're saying, because
Yeah.
that if it's a factory farmed, then the animal could be eating moldy feed, and that is gonna, whatever happens between what they eat and how it gets to the muscle, which is what meat is, then
Hmm.
it's certainly not great for you like it would be from a local farm, or even just with a larger farm but with a lot of ethics. I think that carnivore is also, BPA free and glyphosate free and a lot of the BHT free if you're doing it right. So a lot of the things that are scary out there, pesticides and that kind of thing, there you don't have to worry about that. Gums and binders and polysorbate, none of that is an issue. So I think one of the reasons this is caught on is because it's simple, right? You don't have to like read labels.
Yes.
And that
Hmm.
can be a huge hang up because you don't even know what you're looking for with the label. And then so
Yeah.
anyway,
Look how long it just took
um,
us to describe low carb, and half of it was the
yeah,
end result of like, look at how many carbs you're actually eating. Like that's really hard to do right
like
now.
Well, but unfortunately, carnivore diet, even the guy who came out with it, like, first of all, have you seen him? Because he looks awful.
He
And he did
does.
come out and say, I've had some real health problems as
Mhm.
a result of this. And that's because he is not eating any fiber. He's not eating any antioxidants.
Mhm.
He is not consuming any vitamins or minerals that are not found in meat. So
Mhm.
he's getting some B vitamins, he's getting, iron and zinc and that kind of thing, but he's not getting like any of those beautiful nutrients and polyphenols that we find from eating the rainbow. And yeah, so maybe there's not a lot of research on the carnivore diet itself, but the
There's
research
not.
on a Mediterranean diet
Mhm.
and the benefits of it, every single thing that I do for school, like, and right now I'm in genetics,
Yeah.
even in genetics class, these colorful fruits and vegetables can turn off disease causing genes and turn on the genes that prevent disease.
We do not
So,
give them enough credit. You're absolutely
I
right. That's so
mean,
true.
it's not just like prevent diabetes and make
Mhm.
sure it's like everything. The
Yeah.
fiber is going to prevent colon cancer.
Mhm.
It's just, I could go on forever about how amazing
Yeah.
and how much research is on eating plants.
Mhm.
Now we can talk about solely plants in our next segment here, but I will say both low carb and carnivore. So no, carnivore's a no for me, but I understand why you would want to do it because it's simple and you probably won't have as many symptoms related to it
Mhm.
until
Mhm.
you do.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
after a while, you're gonna really not feel so good. And if
Yeah.
you're eating ham, like deli ham, then I think you're gonna retain a lot of water.
Yeah, seriously.
At the very least.
Yeah, and again,
Uh,
that whole, like, transition thing I just mentioned about the low carb, if you look at your constitution and you've been eating just not well, you know what I mean? Like, you're in a place
mhm,
where, your let's say your hormones are a little bit whacked out, you're not exercising as much as you want to, but you're still eating a carbohydrate load as if you were, and your mental health is getting, skewed because of the way the carbohydrates are coming in and what kind they are, and they're you're eating the condiments, you're putting the creamer in, you're bringing in all of these toxins and things, and maybe a carnivore diet in that moment would actually be an okay solution because you're completely eliminating your body's ability to even step foot in that other metabolic state. So maybe for a minute, let's say people that are severely depleted, or just their body just kind of needs a reset, might find that when they go on the carnivore diet, and I've actually had a couple patients and a family member that have gone through this, when they went through the carnivore diet, they instantly dropped weight. They started feeling so good. And then 2 weeks later, AKA usually when the liver starts engaging, and they were like, oh, wow, like it's vertigo. They're tired,
mhm,
you know, if you can get through that place of like being supported throughout that transition of when you're moving from not eating well to eating well, you may rely on more meat, maybe not carnivore forever. These aren't sustainable, like you mentioned. The whole point is that they're
mhm.
not sustainable, but may not be a terrible idea to introduce some of the concepts of them, which is why I think they become popular, to lean away from these diets that are not sustainable, that are full of, the food that's in front of us, unfortunately.
Totally, totally. And, I mean, I would reintroduce carbohydrates just like you reintroduce anything. So a little bit at a time,
Mhm.
make sure that the form works for you, make sure you've got a balance there. And don't just but the problem is that most people that fall off the carnivore diet fall off into a bag of smarty pants or whatever it is. Not smarty pants, but Swedish fish.
Yeah. They're like, I've never had anything so delicious. Give me all the red number
Right.
40 and high fructose corn syrup right now."
Well, and then again,
Mm.
you see all of the progress that you made with building muscle and losing some weight in the first couple weeks
Yeah.
go away immediately. So I think transitioning slowly
Yep.
and increasing working out and
Mhm.
really focusing on the form of carbohydrates that's going to fuel you best, which is going to be plants and legumes and stuff like that.
Yes.
With your animal proteins, because animal proteins are the most bioavailable protein,
Yes.
easiest to digest, unless we have no stomach acid or really low lipase, which is a different story. But
Yeah.
for the most part, it's really the jam for your body. So
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. And I wanted to say one word on keto, which is that keto is really only if you are in ketogenesis, you're weighing, you're using that 4-to-1 ratio, and it's very effective for epilepsy, but it is going to really, like, I think a lot of people that like all their skin issues went away on keto or carnivore, remembering that may be a non-celiac wheat sensitivity. So
Yes.
try just like eliminating
Mhm.
gluten and like
Mhm.
eating some legumes and stuff like that.
Right.
Don't just assume that
Right.
it's all carbs, because it's not. It's something,
Yep.
but it's not every single carbohydrate out there
Yeah. Yeah.
or plant out there, you know? You gotta eat plants. Like, there's no way around it.
Yeah. Even the eat meat that you're eating has to eat plants in a good variety of them.
Yes, exactly.
It just keeps
Speaking
going
of
round and round,
plants,
Molly. Just keeps going round and round.
speaking of plants, what about the vegan diet?
Love vegans for their place on this planet because they do such a great job for the environment. They encourage the growth of plants, which is so good for our planet, and, you know, get rid of these like, you know, uh, four-legged animals that are, maybe not being produced oftentimes in the way that isn't great for our environment. So I absolutely love that. I love how if you start focusing on being vegan and the next thing you just become friends again with all these bright colors of the rainbow, and I absolutely love that. They're like, oh, I forgot how much I loved veggies, and veggies are very satiating. Like, I could eat a whole plate of veggies and be just fine, kind of like what we talked about before, like these 30% of the little 10, what'd you call it, 10 experiences throughout the day of your meals, what'd you call them, 10 touch points, 10 ingestions. Anyway,
Okay.
um, the food that you're bringing in 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Um, then, so,
Intake.
what'd you call it?
Intake?
Intake. Okay. So, yeah, you're allowing so much more variety to come in. And I really think that I love veganism also because of its ability to help you be creative. When you can't bring in a complete protein from eating a piece of animal, you have to get really creative in how you bring on your food. And I think those are really great points to the vegan part of things. I think that's really great. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, it lacks in really necessary nutrients like B12. Obviously, we know that one. Our vegans love the yeast and the sublingual supplements in their mouth. Calcium's another way we don't get a ton of, and even just protein. And protein, kind of leads me to that other con in that it really just forces your body to be in a state of working really hard to bring in complete proteins from all different sources. So you kind of are like, hey, digestion, you're going to have a lot of work today. Hey, assimilation, all the organs that are involved in that, you're going to work really hard today. And when you do that all the time, it's kind of hard on our
Mm-hmm.
body. I think, certain constitutions can do okay with it. Lastly, I think dumb vegans rely on a lot of fake food, which I think is so stupid. They're like, oh, I had this
Mm-hmm.
fake cheese or this fake that or this fake the other. And I cannot handle that. That makes me bananas. I'm like, no, that's not the idea of veganism, is having this highly processed fake food. Like, that's totally the opposite. Um, but I do love them for other reasons. What about you, dear?
So I I think I've met probably with vegans 50% of each. I've met 50% of the vegans that I've met really eat the rainbow, and eat a lot of plants, but don't get enough protein. Never met a vegan that got enough protein. And 50% are the kind of person that says, did you know Oreos, fruit by the foot, Doritos, all vegan. Um, so
Yeah.
Fritos.
You're like, okay, what's your point?
You're like, okay, well, now you're really like, not only are you not, but you're also, and then the whole rise of the impossible, whatever that has 100 ingredients in it, like you're saying. The black bean crunch wrap supreme is vegan, Taco Bell.
Hmm.
So remembering that you can still, it's not a default healthy diet, right? There are plenty of ways that you can, and I think sometimes we brainwash ourselves into thinking, well, I'm a vegan, so I'm healthy. And it's okay that I eat
Hmm.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that that's another, I feel like the more information we have, the more people can justify decisions that they make because of the perception around it.
Mhm.
So, keeping that in mind, the B vitamins, several minerals, and iron only come from animal proteins. So, not all B vitamins, but B6 and B12. And what that means is that most of the time you need a B supplement complex when you're a vegan, just because, I don't know if you've ever met people who like their skin is kind of pale and their hair is not very thick
Yeah, in
and they
Chinese
seem really
medicine, we call
thin.
that blood deficiency. You know, you don't
Yes,
have that
yes,
shen, you don't have that sparkle in your eye and the pinkness in your cheeks, and your
right.
nails are full and strong, and your hair is more full, and you can even see it in the muscle tonicity, you can see it in a healthy
Yes,
period blood. Your tongue is
right.
a vibrant pink color, it's not pale, and you're not standing up and getting dizzy, and you're freezing cold when it drops below 70. Yeah, anemia, yeah, lack of heme iron, that's a problem for sure.
Right. Because non-heme iron is a source of iron, but you have to pair it with vitamin C and you have to eat quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
And also those B vitamins, B12 is really, that's how we run the Krebs cycle, which is our energy cycle,
Mhm.
to make energy. So without it, that cycle's not running very well.
Right.
And like beans are missing a few amino acids. So we've got to bring in those amino acids with rice. That's why
Mhm.
beans and rice go together because it's a complete protein.
Mhm.
So even beans, which seem like a really good source of protein, are not a complete protein. So amino acids are responsible for all kinds of stuff, but for the most part, neurotransmitters, pain control, pH regulation, detox, cholesterol metabolism, and inflammation. So
And
we want to
muscle.
make
And just
sure
building
that
muscle.
and genes,
Mhm.
amino acids create genes. So without healthy genes, then that's where we start to see chronic disease. So I think if you're a vegan, it wouldn't be my pick, personally, or vegetarian also wouldn't be my pick. But if you are a vegan, you want to be eating plenty of nuts. You want to make sure that you do work with someone, even just once, to get your B levels tested and get you on an appropriate supplement. And you really want to know a lot about protein and dedicate your life to getting enough of it. Because
Mhm.
as someone who's an omnivore myself, I don't get enough protein unless I really pay attention.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there are a lot of distractions out there. It's difficult to pay attention day in and day out and get enough protein. So if you aren't eating animal protein, then it's four times as difficult.
Yeah. I did want to mention too that Mother Nature is actually really smart in terms of plants with iron, in that most of the time iron containing at least medicinals do already come with vitamin C, and they are at a specific pH so that your stomach can set itself up for absorption later on in the small intestine, like red clover, nettles. In Chinese medicine, when people are deficient, like we mentioned before, we use an herb called Hushu Wu or Angelica, and they're all set up with that level of C and iron, which is really, really lovely. But again, it's not heme, and it acts differently in the body.
So interesting because even in school, my master's program, it was like spinach and orange juice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of plants that do that. And actually, way back in the day when I worked at this place called Your Health, we sold supplements. I was like, okay, I'm going to, I need to learn a lot about these. And there's a really old product. It's called Floradix,
Oh my gosh, I
Floradix.
used to love it.
Yeah. And when you are deficient in iron, it will make you feel so good because it's literally, I think it's apple cider vinegar. I don't think there's any alcohol in there. If there is, it's very mild, but it's essentially like a really strong decoction of all of these, roots, twigs, leaves that are dried, and they turn it into this lovely, like really dark liquid. Like it looks like, oh, if that's going to nourish anything in my body, it's going to be blood. And people find that that can really be helpful. In addition, with a complete diet, to avoid, becoming anemic, and you're training your body to do a little bit better with those pieces that are coming in to assimilate it too. Like, I think sometimes these types of diets can be good to teach your body how to do those things again. But again, we don't want to
Hmm.
do them long term because it's exhausting. Your body's like, geez, Louise, can you just give me a little chunk of beef that was raised, sustainably, so that I can just bring it in and call it good and move on?
Hmm. Right. 100%. I think that's amazing. And, you know, again, it's okay. There are some people who just really, and I understand why you wouldn't want to eat animals. Um, so for me, like we have a ton of farms around here.
Mhm.
And I think people think I live in the mountains of South Carolina, kind of like on the border of South and North Carolina. And I think people underestimate like how many wonderful farms are in their area.
Yeah.
Even when we lived in Florida, like, I mean, I'm from Maine, so tons of farms are there and obviously here, but even when we lived in Florida, there were cattle farms and like chicken farms where you can go and or you can see them at the farmers market and they're selling stuff. And now that animal products are more expensive, the prices aren't as different as they used to be.
Mhm.
Like, a lot of times, eggs from the farmer's market are cheaper than, like, an organic egg at Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Or
just think about the quality of life that the chicken had that grew up down the street.
mhm.
Um, I think being ethical about where you're sourcing your protein could be a way to not support factory farms, not be unsure about what the animal ate or what's going on with that, but still get a balance.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, we had a little 3 to 4 number that came out in our Chinese nutrition class, was 3 to 4 ounces of like lean meat protein or meat protein 3 to 4 times a week, which I find so interesting for like the normal human that's just kind of moving through the day, not someone who's lacking or someone who's perimenopausal or there's like a symptom picture happening, that just like regular maintenance of meat would be this much. And I find that interesting because it's a little on the small side. I think that's kind of
Right.
low, but um that was actually a really long time ago that this was established, like thousands of years. So I think we need a little bit more now. We live quite a bit longer, and we have a lot of things like brain and hormones that need those essential nutrients in there. We just can't get away with that as much anymore.
Hmm. Um, okay. Well, I hope that this was a good kind of overview for people who do feel confused and who aren't sure what to pick. The perfect diet, in the opinion of the research, which is the only opinion that I try to have, and this is so many years of just hundreds of thousands of studies, is the Mediterranean diet. Watch the show The Blue Zones with Dan Butner. Watch look at those people live until they're 100, and they're all in areas where they're definitely not avoiding protein,
Mhm.
or animal protein. They're definitely not avoiding carbohydrates. It's just you're focusing on the plants, you're moving around,
Mhm.
you are eating tons of beans, definitely seems to be a big part of it. And you're happy. You have a reason to live. You have kind of like a masogi, which is well, you can probably explain that better than I can.
A masogi? Is this a Japanese
It's
term? It sounds Japanese.
I believe so.
Masogi.
Let's look it
Mhm.
up. So it is a Japanese ritual. Oh, there are multiple matches, a marketing company and an Android app. So
A
Masogi,
cool word, apparently.
it is it's like the defining event. So it's like kind of like a challenge that pushes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the
And so
propeller in your purpose.
right, like, so for me, it's helping women with IBS have predictable bowel movements
Mhm.
and get to the root cause of what's causing their symptoms.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what propels me in all of my professional things and what I really like to talk about and also what informs my decisions as someone with Crohn's disease. Um, I think but I think more technically it's 1 year. So I guess you could have like one different every year. Like I know Jesse Itzler does like some kind of like ultra marathon or something, and that's like his Masogi, he calls it.
Oh.
But to me, I think loosely it's more like a reason to live. And that is a big part of it. So if you look at that, then, okay, it's not just what you eat, it's not just what you do, it's not just where your emotions are or where your
Mhm.
social life is. It's
Mhm.
it's all of those things connected. So getting really hyper focused on something like sugar, or carbs or carnivore is kind of the opposite of what the research tells us is going to help you to prevent disease and support your body.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. I love it. It kind of plays on our last uh podcast about finding your why, and when you get
Yes.
stuck with these types of transitions that, maybe you're going to lean a little carnivore or a little low carb or a little vegan, based on what your constitution is, to get you to a place where you can reflect and see what does and doesn't work for you. That remembering your why in those moments, or your I don't want to butcher that.
Masogi.
Masogi, um, that source of origin of influence and motivation, is a space of groundedness, because it can be really hard, or it is. I'm just gonna say it is really hard in our world to make the choices that feel right for you.
Mm,
Darn
love
it.
it.
Aw.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's great. I feel like I learned a lot today from you, Molly. Thank you.
I feel like I learned a lot from you too. Okay, so we have some more fun stuff for you next Saturday, and we'll see you.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Enjoy the day.
Thank you so much for listening. We offer personalized support to clients in many ways and would love to work with you. Reach out to Lara at Lala's Wellness and Molly at Women's Gut Health for more information. Unlock your full health and hormone potential with Super Cube, Boom Bomb, and Best Tea. Check out the link in the show notes for more. See you next Saturday.